The stagecoach left Clara Vance standing alone in the road, with one trunk, one carpet bag, and snow filling the ruts behind it. The driver did not look back. Whisper Canyon rose on both sides of her black rock buried under white. Wind drove loose snow against her cheeks like ground glass. Her Boston gloves had gone stiff before the coach reached the bend. A man waited beside a gray horse. He was taller than she had expected, broad through the shoulders. A dark coat hung from him like dead hide. A scar ran from his left temple into his brow, pale against weather-burned skin. When he stepped forward, his right leg dragged half a beat behind the other. Clara Vance, yes. Elias Thorne. That was all. He lifted her trunk into the wagon. The iron edge struck the boards with a flat crack. Clara climbed beside him. The seat was crusted with ice. For 3 miles, the only sounds were harness rings, runners biting frozen ground, and Elias coughing once into his fist. His ranch stood at the canyon's narrow end. House, barn, windmill locked still in ice. No neighboring smoke. No church bell. No road going farther. Inside the cabin smelled of cedar smoke, lamp oil, and wet wool. A rifle rested above the door. One plate had been set on the table. Elias took off his hat. The room at the back is yours. Clara looked down the short hall. And yours, barn. The lamp flame bent when the wind struck the wall. We are married by contract, she said. Not strangers at an inn. His jaw worked once. Contract says I give you my name, food, shelter, and half the ranch if I die before spring. It says husband. His eyes moved to the fire. Paper says plenty. He picked up a blanket and turned toward the door. Clara caught the table's edge. Is there another woman? No. Do you find me unfit? His hand stopped on the latch. No. Then why sleep among horses while your wife freezes 10 steps away? He looked at her. The scar tightened above his eye. I made a vow before you came. I will not break it. To whom the dead? He stepped outside and shut the door. The bolt slid into place beneath Clara's fingers. She stood without moving. Snow hissed against the roof. Timber groaned inside the wall. The cabin felt smaller with each breath. She took off her gloves. Her fingertips were white. She held them near the stove until pain came back sharp and deep. A tin pot of coffee sat on the shelf. She poured a cup. It was black enough to stain the rim and bitter enough to pull water from her eyes. She drank anyway. Boston had held her inside locked rooms' ledgers and her uncle's hand pressing down on every page she drew. Here there were no street lamps, no voices through brick, only a man in the barn making vows to graves. The window burst inward. Glass flew across the floor. Clara dropped the cup. Coffee struck her skirt. A stone rolled under the table wrapped in sheepskin and tied with red cord. Cold poured through the broken frame. The barn door slammed outside. Elias crossed the yard with his rifle limping hard through knee-deep snow. He entered without knocking. Down. Clara crouched behind the stove. Elias searched the white dark beyond the shattered window. Nothing moved but snow. He lowered the rifle. Clara untied the cord. Inside the hide was a folded paper stamped with the territorial court's seal. Elias read it once, then again. His thumb pressed so hard into the page that the nail went bloodless. What is it? Clara asked. He laid the paper on the table. Notice of seizure. The hearing was set for sunrise 3 days hence. Failure to appear would forfeit house stock water rights and every acre bearing the Thorne name. At the bottom beneath the clerk's mark, someone had written, "You should have stayed buried with the others." Elias stared at the words, while snow blew through the broken window and melted across the floor between them. Then he barred the door, as if the thing hunting him had already found the house. Word count, 717 Toi da Viet Sung. Ban kamun tiptuk sang chung tip teochong. The court hearing never came. By dawn, the road had vanished. Snow climbed halfway up the cabin door and sealed the canyon behind a white wall. The wind struck the roof in long blows, shaking soot from the chimney. Elias stood at the broken window, fitting boards across the frame while Clara held the lamp. "You'll miss the hearing," she said. "So will the judge." And Sterling. "He owns a sleigh." The hammer stopped. Elias looked toward the barn. A cow bawled once low and strained. He was out the door before Clara could reach her coat. For 14 days, the storm held them. Morning began in darkness. Elias broke ice from the water trough. Clara carried feed through snow that reached her thighs. They spoke only when words were needed. More wood, calves loose, roof beams shifting. At night, Elias still took his blanket to the barn. On the 5th evening, Clara found blood frozen along his boot. "You tore the leg." "Old wound. It is open. It closes." She set a basin near the stove. "Sit." His eyes narrowed. Clara dipped a cloth into hot water. "You may limp into your grave after I finish." He sat. The scar along his shin was thick and twisted with a fresh split near the knee. He did not flinch when she cleaned it, but his fingers dug into the chair until the wood creaked. "You were buried," she said. His eyes lifted. The note said, "You should have stayed buried." For a time, only the stove answered. "Copper mine collapsed 8 years back," he said. 12 men below. I came out, and the others did not." He pulled his trouser leg down. "They are here North Ridge. In marked graves no preacher came. No families had money. Company wanted the shaft covered and forgotten." His mouth went hard. "I bought the land when they abandoned it. Promised no rails, no drill. No man hunting silver would tear through their bones." Clara glanced toward the barn door. "The vow." He stood. "Now you know." The next morning, the storm took a calf. They found it behind the far stall, stiff on one side, and breathing through a mouth rimmed with ice. Elias reached down, then stopped. Too far gone. Clara pulled off her coat. "What are you doing, Move?" She wrapped the calf in wool, dragged it near the stove, and rubbed its legs until her palms burned. She warmed milk in a tin cup, soaked a rag, and pressed drops against its tongue. Hours passed. The calf did not move. Elias stood by the wall, silent snow melting from his shoulders. Clara bent close. "Come on, little thing." One ear twitched. Then the calf coughed milk across her sleeve. Elias crossed the room in 2 steps. He knelt, slid one hand beneath the animal's chest, and held it upright while Clara fed it. Their hands touched under the blanket. Neither pulled away. That night, Elias left the barn door open. Not the house door, but the barn door. Clara saw the lamp burning beside his cot until sleep took her. Near noon the next day, hoofbeats came through the storm. Elias reached for his rifle. The cabin door burst inward before he could raise it. Mayor Archibald Sterling entered in a fur-lined coat, followed by Sheriff Vale and 2 armed deputies. Snow rolled around their boots. Sterling removed his gloves 1 finger at a time. "Thorne," he said, "you missed your hearing." The road was closed, not to the law. He laid a red leather folder on the table. A federal seal shone beneath the lamp. Clara saw Elias's shoulders lock. Sterling smiled. "By authority of the United States government, this ranch is condemned. Word count 687 toid a viet sung. Ban komun tiptuk sangchung tip teochong." Sterling opened the red folder and spread a survey across Elias's table. The paper covered the coffee stains, the knife marks, and half the loaf Clara had baked that morning. Blue lines marked creeks. Black lines marked property bounds. A wide red stain ran beneath the Thorne Ranch. Sterling tapped it with 1 clean fingernail. Poisoned water. Elias did not look at the map. He looked at Sterling. There is no poison. There is arsenic copper wash and enough mine acid to kill livestock from here to the county line. My cattle drink it. For now. Sheriff Vale shifted beside the door. Snow melted from his boots and darkened the floorboards. Sterling pulled out another paper. Under territorial public safety law, land may be taken when it threatens settlement rail traffic or a municipal water source. There ain't a rail here, Elias said. There will be. The room went still. Clara saw it then. Not fear in Sterling's face. Hunger. He wanted the canyon cleared before the tracks came through. Elias planted both hands on the table. Those graves stay where they are. Sterling's mouth bent. Dead miners hold no title. The chair struck the wall behind Elias. Sheriff Vale reached for his revolver. Clara stepped between them. Not in my house. Sterling's eyes moved over her as if she were another object listed for seizure. You are free to leave before removal begins, when tomorrow at noon. The notice gave 3 days. The hearing was held without you. The road was closed. The court was open. Elias's chest rose once hard enough to pull his coat tight across his shoulders. Sterling rolled the remaining papers together and tied them with cord. I will return with wagons. He left the survey on the table. The deputies followed him into the white yard. Sheriff Vale paused at the threshold. Don't make this worse, Elias. Elias looked past him. It was made worse 8 years ago. The door shut. For a long while, the only sound was the calf sucking milk in the crate beside the stove. Elias crossed to the rifle rack. Clara watched him take down the Winchester. He set cartridges in a row. Brass clicked against wood. 1, 2, 3. Put them away, she said. They come through that door tomorrow. They leave without this land. Or you leave under a sheet. He slid another cartridge into the rifle. I gave my word. To protect the graves. To keep men off them. You cannot hold back a federal order with one rifle. I can make the first 6 pay. Clara's hand struck the table. The lamp jumped. No. Elias stopped. She had not raised her voice since Boston. Not when her uncle took credit for her work. Not when he sold her labor and called it shelter. Not when she boarded the westbound coach with every bridge behind her burning. Now the word filled the cabin. Elias looked at her. She pulled the train ticket from her pocket and threw it onto the table. Take the morning freight, he said. I will not. You signed for shelter. I cannot give it. I signed for a husband. His eyes dropped. I ain't much use as one. The rifle remained between them. He turned away. Pack before dark. Clara picked up Sterling's survey. The paper smelled of sizing glue and damp leather. She ran one finger along the red drainage lines, then across the printed latitude marks. Something snagged in her mind. The southern boundary bent where no ridge bent. The creek flowed uphill. Her breath shortened. At the lower corner sat the surveyor's signature, written in a narrow hand with a hooked capital R. Clara knew that hand. She had copied it onto government submissions for 4 years. She pressed the map flat and leaned closer. Elias. He did not turn. Who drew this federal survey office says the seal. No. Her finger rested beneath the signature. This man never surveyed Whisper Canyon. Elias faced her. Clara's eyes moved over the false lines, the shifted numbers, and the hidden shape beneath them. He copied one of mine. Word count 679 toy de Viet Sung. Ban kamun tip tuk sang chung tip teo khong. Elias came to the table. Clara did not look up. She traced the False Creek line with one nail, then turned the map toward the lamp. The man who signed this is Rufus Bell, she said. My uncle's chief surveyor. You know him. I know every crooked mark he makes. Elias glanced at the rifle. Can you prove it? Clara crossed the room and dropped to her knees before her trunk. The hinges had frozen stiff during the journey. She pulled until one gave with a sharp crack. Beneath 2 dresses, a wool shawl, and a pair of city shoes lay 6 leather-bound books tied with blue ribbon. She set them on the table. "What are those, my work?" The first book opened to columns of figures. Bearings, elevations, river depths, notes written small enough to fit between printed lines. The second held hand-drawn maps. Elias touched the edge of one page. "You made these for the Northeastern Railroad Association. You were a clerk. That is what my uncle called me when men were listening." She pulled a brass compass from the trunk, then a ruler, a divider, and 3 sharpened pencils. "I checked accounts by day. At night I corrected survey routes his men could not calculate." He put his name on every sheet. Elias looked at the hooked R on Sterling's map, and Belle copied whatever my uncle ordered. Clara set the false map beside one of her old contour studies. Both used the same spacing, the same symbols, even the same mistake in a mountain scale she had corrected years before. She lit a second lamp. "Hold this flat." Elias put both palms on the corners. For the next 6 hours, the storm beat the cabin while Clara worked. Ink stained the side of her hand. Her hair slipped loose and clung to her cheek. She measured each false latitude, recalculated every slope, and redrew the canyon line by line. Elias fed the stove and said nothing. Near midnight, Clara laid a sheet of oiled paper over Sterling's survey. "See this creek? It runs east. Not at that grade. Water would have to climb 12 feet. She marked the true course in black, and these coordinates were shifted 1 degree south. That moves the poison basin beneath your ranch." Why, Clara set the divider against a cluster of numbers at the north ridge. The metal points trembled once, then held. "To hide this." She drew a tight oval beneath the graves. Elias bent closer. "What is it, Silver?" The word sat between them. Clara opened another book and showed him the mineral signs Belle had copied but failed to erase. The old copper seam cut across a deeper vein. Sterling had not come for public safety. He had come for the mine beneath the dead. Elias straightened slowly. The rifle remained on the table, but his hand no longer reached for it. "Can a judge understand this? A true judge can. Sterling owns the court." "Not tomorrow." She pointed to the federal seal. "This order claims federal authority. A circuit judge is riding through town for the winter docket. Sterling used that seal because he thought no one here could challenge it." Elias stared at her maps, then at her. All the hard lines in his face shifted, not softer but steadier. "I was fixing to die over land I did not know how to save." Clara wiped ink across her apron. "You still may lose it." His eyes held hers. "But not because I sent you away." Outside, the wind dropped. In the sudden quiet, the barn boards creaked, and the calf gave one thin bleat. Clara gathered the maps and tied them with blue ribbon. "Court opens at dawn." Elias picked up the rifle. For one breath, Clara's hand stopped. Then he emptied every cartridge onto the table. "We fight with your weapon," he said. Clara looked at the ink drying under the lamp. By sunrise, they would either leave the courthouse with the ranch or leave with Sterling knowing exactly what he had failed to bury. Word count sao chum chin mui. Toi da viet song. Ban kom tip tok sang chung tip teo. The courthouse steps were buried under gray snow. Elias climbed them beside Clara, one hand beneath her elbow and the other empty. No rifle, no cartridge belt. Only the limp that worsened in the cold. Men crowded the hall before the doors opened. Ranchers, widows, miners with dust still caught in the seams of their coats. Some lowered their eyes when Elias passed. Others watched Clara carry the blue-ribboned maps against her chest. Sterling stood near the judge's bench in a black coat, speaking softly to Sheriff Vale. His smile faded when he saw them. "You were ordered off that land." Elias stopped 3 feet away. You ordered it. Sterling's eyes moved to Clara. And what has the little clerk brought us? Clara laid the map case on counsel's table. Your arithmetic. The clerk called the room to order. Judge Horace Whitcomb entered through the rear door, white-haired and bent at one shoulder from years in the saddle. A federal marshal followed him. Sterling's jaw tightened. Whitcomb took his seat. I am told a federal seal was used in a condemnation matter. Sterling stepped forward. For the safety of the public, Your Honor. He spoke for 20 minutes. Poisoned water. Dead cattle that had never died. Children not yet born. Rail passengers not yet carried. Each lie came dressed in law. At last, Sterling placed the seizure order before the bench. The danger is plain. Judge Whitcomb looked toward Elias. Your answer, Elias rose. Every face turned toward him. He rested both hands on the table, shoulders broad enough to hide Clara from half the room. My answer is my wife. A murmur moved through the benches. Clara stepped around him. Sterling gave a small laugh. This is no place for household concerns. No, Clara said. It is a place for numbers. She opened Sterling's survey and pinned its corners flat with ink bottles. Then she laid her correction over it. The room went quiet enough to hear the stove iron tick. This creek is marked as flowing east, Clara said. The grade rises 12 feet before it reaches that point. Water does not climb hills even under federal order. A few men in the rear laughed. Sterling did not. Clara marked the false latitude. Then the shifted boundary. Then the copied mineral symbols buried beneath red ink. Judge Whitcomb leaned forward. Where did you learn survey work, Northeastern Railroad Association? Sterling cut in. She was a secretary. Clara opened one of her leather books. Then your surveyor stole from a secretary. She placed an old Boston map beside the government copy. Same scale, same symbols, same hooked capital R. Rufus Bell copied my field system. He also copied an error I corrected 4 years ago. That error appears here. Her pencil struck the page. And here. Another mark. And here. Sterling's face had gone pale around the mouth. Clara drew the true drainage line across the map. The red poison basin moved away from the ranch. Under it appeared the narrow shape Sterling had tried to hide. Judge Whitcomb removed his spectacles, wiped them, and put them back on. What lies beneath the North Ridge, Silver, Clara said. And 12 graves. A sound came from the benches. Not one voice. Many. A widow stood. My husband is up there. Then another man rose. My brother. Sheriff Vale looked toward Sterling. Sterling backed away from the table. This is wild guessing. Judge Whitcomb held up Bell's signed survey. It is federal fraud. The marshal stepped forward. Sterling reached for the door. Vale blocked him. For the first time, the sheriff's hand closed around Sterling's wrist instead of Elias's. The irons snapped shut. The room broke open. Boots struck the floor. Men shouted names of lost claims, poisoned wells, stolen acres. Through it all, Elias looked only at Clara, not at the judge, not at the silver, at her ink-black fingers resting beside the map that had saved his dead. Outside, the snow had begun to melt from the courthouse roof. Judge Whitcomb struck down the seizure, restored the Thorne title, and placed the North Ridge under federal protection. By noon, the ranch was safe. By spring, the marriage would end. Winter loosened its grip one drop at a time. Water fell from the cabin roof. The creek broke through its ice and ran brown over stone. On the south slope, sage pushed up through the last patches of snow, gray-green beneath the morning sun. Clara packed on the first clear day of spring. 2 dresses went into the trunk. Then the leather books. Then the brass compass wrapped in wool. She left the blue ribbon on the table. Elias stood in the doorway with his hat in both hands. The eastbound train comes Friday, he said. I know. You could return to Boston. No. His fingers tightened around the brim. There are survey offices in Denver. Whitcomb wrote that letter for you. I know that too. The room had grown warm, yet Elias did not step inside. Since the court ruling, he had repaired the broken window, mended the barn roof, and built a stone wall around the miners' graves. He had done every task she mentioned before she finished asking. He had not asked her to stay. Clara closed the trunk. I will visit the ridge before I leave. His head lifted. They walked there after sunrise. The snow had drawn back from 12 low mounds. Each now bore a cedar marker cut by Elias's hand. Where names were known, he had carved them. Where no name remained, he had carved, "A man was here." Federal boundary posts stood beyond the graves. No railroad could cross them. No pick could break that ground. Elias removed his hat. Wind moved through the sage and carried the raw smell of wet earth. I used to come up here and count them, he said. 12 graves. Every morning. Every night. Clara stood beside him. I reckoned if I stopped, I would be the last man to leave them. His eyes stayed on the markers. So I made the vow. No wife, no child, nothing I could lose while guarding what I already had. Clara looked down at her hands. Ink still darkened the lines near her nails. And now Elias turned toward her. The old scar drew tight when he swallowed. Now the land is safe, and I have no vow left but the one I was too cowardly to speak. His hat fell into the sage. He took her hands carefully, as if asking leave even then. I do not want a wife until spring. Clara's breath caught. I want you when the creek floods, when the calves come early, when my leg fails and I grow mean with it. I want your books on my table and your ink on every rag in the house. His thumbs moved once across her knuckles. I spent 8 years keeping faith with dead men. Let me spend what remains keeping faith with you. Clara pulled the folded marriage contract from her coat. Elias's hands dropped. She opened it between them. The paper still bore the terms she had signed in Boston, shelter name 1 winter lawful separation at thaw. She tore it down the middle. Then again. The wind caught the pieces and carried them over the sage-white scraps turning in the sun before falling among the melting snow. Elias stared at them. Clara picked up his hat and pressed it against his chest. You may sleep in the house tonight. His mouth moved, but no words came. She rose on her toes and kissed him beneath the scar. When they walked back down the ridge, Elias did not limp ahead of her. He matched her step. Smoke lifted from the cabin chimney. Inside, a loaf of honey bread browned in the oven, and the little calf they had saved bawled from the yard, as if the whole canyon had failed to keep quiet. Clara opened the door. Elias followed her in. This time he did not carry a blanket toward the barn. Word count 694 toid a viet sung. Ban kamun tip tuk sang chung tip teochong.